They laughed when she said her dreams were bigger than the village she was born in. They told her girls like her were meant to stay small, meant to stay invisible. But the world has a cruel way of underestimating the wrong person. Because from the dirt roads of her childhood to the glass towers of the world's biggest companies, her journey would become the proof that no cage can hold a burning dream. She was born in a village so small that if you blinked while traveling down the dusty road, you might miss it entirely. The kind of place where children ran barefoot through fields, where the smell of earth after rain was stronger than perfume, and where every face was familiar, sometimes too familiar. Her home was a clay-walled house with a thatched roof, 2 rooms, a single lantern that flickered at night, and stories whispered by elders who had never seen a world beyond the nearest town. It was not wealth that raised her. It was simplicity. It was survival. Her parents worked the land. Her father bent over the fields from dawn till dusk. Her mother carrying water on her head across long stretches of dirt, hands roughened by years of cooking, cleaning, stitching, never resting. And yet, somehow, in that small house filled with struggle, there was love. The kind of love that made poverty feel a little less heavy. Every evening, her father would sit outside under the neem tree, his cracked hands holding a cup of chai, and he would say, half jokingly, half wishing, "One day my little girl will fly away from here, and when she does, the whole world will know her name." Her mother would laugh, shake her head. "Dreams are beautiful, but don't let them make you forget who you are." But her father's words, they stayed with her. She wasn't the brightest student in her school, at least not in the way teachers measured intelligence. Her handwriting was messy, her clothes worn and patched, her books secondhand, their pages torn at the edges. But she had something the others didn't. Fire. She was curious about everything. Why the sky changed colors at sunset. Why the birds returned to the same tree every night. Why the men in suits on TV looked so different from the men in her village. And most of all, why no one believed she could be one of them. At school, she sat at the back of the class. Partly because her family couldn't afford the donation for a front row seat. Partly because she liked to watch, to listen, to imagine. Her classmates mocked her dreams. "You work in a big company, maybe as a sweeper." Their laughter stung, but it didn't kill her spirit. In fact, it sharpened it. Every insult became fuel. Every doubt became a whisper in her ear at night. Prove them wrong. Still, the bond she shared with her family held her together. Her younger brother, always chasing her around the courtyard, her grandmother, telling her old tales by the fire, her father, proud even of her smallest victories. It was in these small moments of warmth that her dreams felt possible. But life in the village was not without cracks. Jealousy brews even in the simplest of places. Her relatives, their whispers sharp as knives. Why is she allowed to study when others must marry early? The neighbors. A girl dreaming of offices in the city. Dangerous. She will forget her roots. And sometimes, even her mother's worry felt like doubt. Dreaming is good, Beta, but don't dream too much. Life will break your heart if you do. It was love, but also fear. Fear that the world outside would crush her before she even began. The first real fracture came not from outsiders, but from someone closer. Her cousin, a girl she grew up with, played in the fields with, whispered secrets to under the stars. They were like sisters, until ambition created a silent war between them. Her cousin envied the way teachers praised her for her questions, envied the way her father encouraged her, envied the spark in her eyes. And slowly, the warmth between them turned cold. It began with subtle remarks. "Books won't cook food for your family. You think you're smarter than everyone else now." First, she ignored it, pretended the bond was still unbroken. But sometimes, the deepest betrayals don't begin with explosions. They begin with whispers. And in the silence of her small room, pens scratching against her old notebook, she felt it. Something was about to change. Something was about to break. The days in the village followed a rhythm. Predictable, almost like the seasons themselves. Morning began with the sound of roosters, women drawing water from the well, children running late to school with slates tucked under their arms. By afternoon, the fields shimmered under the unforgiving sun, and by evening, families gathered around fires, telling stories older than memory itself. She should have been content. After all, most girls her age had already been promised to husbands, or were learning the endless duties of running a household. But she wasn't like most girls. She couldn't be. Her notebooks were filled with sketches, ideas, fragments of sentences, things she didn't even fully understand yet. She scribbled company logos she'd seen once on a broken TV in the school office. Strange English words she couldn't pronounce, but loved the way they looked like codes to another world. At night, when her family slept, she would sneak outside. The stars were her secret classroom, the moonlight her lamp. And in that silence, she would whisper to herself, "Someday, I'll get out. Someday, they'll know my name." Her father believed in her. But belief couldn't buy books, couldn't pay school fees on time, couldn't convince neighbors that a girl's education was worth more than her dowry. So she learned to sacrifice. She sold the bangles her grandmother had given her. She skipped meals so her brother could eat. And she studied harder. Like every page she turned was a weapon against her fate. But even as she pushed forward, shadows grew around her. Her cousin, once her shadow in play, now turned into something else. Envy made her sharper, colder. At school, she whispered to others, "She thinks she's too good for us." She spread doubts in the family. If she studies too much, she will never find a husband. Slowly, the warmth of companionship was replaced with tension. Family gatherings once filled with laughter now had silent undertones. Stares that lingered too long, smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Her mother tried to balance it all. She loved her daughter, but she feared the whispers. In their village, reputation was fragile like glass. One crack, and everything could shatter. "Beta," she would say, her voice low, "be careful how high you fly. The higher you go, the harder the fall." But her father, he only smiled. "She was not born to crawl," he'd reply almost defiantly. "If she falls, she will stand again. That is who she is." Those words became her shield. And yet, even shields can feel heavy after too many blows. The real test began when a scholarship form arrived at her school. A chance to study in the city. A chance to step out of the village. A chance to turn whispers into silence. Her teacher believed in her. Quietly placed the form on her desk. "You're the only one I see capable of this." Her heart raced as she held the paper. For a moment, it was like holding her future in her hands. But futures don't come without a price. And soon the cracks in her world widened. Her cousin found out. The envy that had been simmering turned into fire. You think you'll leave us all behind? Go to the city and forget us?" She spat, her voice sharp, cutting through the air. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. Because buried beneath her cousin's anger was a truth she feared too. That maybe by chasing her dream, she would lose the people she loved most. But dreams are merciless. They don't let you sleep once they've been planted. So she filled out the form, hiding it under her mattress. She gathered documents with trembling hands. She prayed at night, begging the universe for just one chance. And yet she didn't know. She didn't know that the betrayal she feared wasn't coming from strangers. It was coming from the very bond she once trusted the most. The night before she was to submit the form, she caught her cousin in her room. The papers in her hands. The look in her eyes. Not of guilt, but of satisfaction. That's when it hit her. The bond they had was broken. The secret war was no longer secret. And this time, the damage could not be undone. Something deep inside her shifted. Dreams weren't just about reaching the world anymore. They were about surviving the betrayal of the ones who tried to hold her back. Something was breaking. And this time, it wasn't just the silence. The night after she found her cousin with the scholarship papers, sleep abandoned her. Every creak of the old wooden house sounded like a threat. Every shadow felt like it was watching. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking herself the same question again and again. Why her? Why would she do this to me? But deep down, she already knew the answer. Envy. It's a quiet poison. It doesn't announce itself. It slips in through cracks of comparison, through the wounds of insecurity. And once it takes root, it destroys even the closest bonds. By morning, she made a decision. She wouldn't confront her cousin yet. She couldn't risk another scene in front of the family. Instead, she pretended nothing had happened. But pretending has a cost. And every smile she forced felt like shards of glass in her mouth. At school, she filled the form again. Every stroke of her pen was slower this time. Not out of hesitation, but out of defiance. Like she was carving her will into paper. She sealed the envelope and clutched it to her chest as if it were her heartbeat. When the day came to submit it, the sky was heavy with rain. The muddy roads were almost impossible to cross. But she didn't care. Barefoot, with her dress soaked and hair sticking to her face, she ran. She ran until her lungs burned. Until her legs gave way. And finally, she handed it over. Her fingers trembling, her eyes refusing to let go. Walking back that day, she felt something inside her. Not relief. Not yet. But something stronger than fear. The knowledge that she had chosen herself. Even if the world chose against her. Still, the cracks in her home grew deeper. Her cousin's whispers turned into daggers. She's going to leave us. She thinks we're not enough. Relatives joined in, shaking their heads at her parents. Why waste so much on one girl? What about your son? What about the family honor? Her mother's face grew more tired each day. She stopped defending her daughter as fiercely. Fear had worn her down. Reputation was currency in their world. And they couldn't afford to lose it. But her father, he remained her quiet anchor. Sitting outside one evening, he called her over. His hands were rough from the fields, but when he placed them on hers, they felt like the strongest shield in the world. You're walking a road no one here understands, he whispered. And that's why they fear you. But listen to me. You were born for more than these walls. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She nodded, holding his words like fire in her chest. Weeks passed. And the letter finally arrived. A simple white envelope. Small enough to fit in her hand, yet heavy enough to decide her future. Her heart pounded as she tore it open. Her eyes raced over the words, until she froze. Congratulations. You have been selected. Her breath caught in her throat. She read it again, and again, just to be sure. It was real. She was going to the city. But joy rarely travels alone. And even in that moment, she felt the shadow of betrayal lurking nearby. Her cousin found out almost immediately. The smile on her face didn't reach her eyes. So, you're really leaving us, she said flatly. No congratulations. No hug. Just a quiet bitterness that dripped like venom. That night, she overheard her cousin speaking to neighbors. She won't last a month there. The city will eat her alive. Mark my words. The words cut deep. But they also planted something else inside her. Not doubt. Determination. The weeks leading to her departure were a blur of preparation. A trunk of borrowed clothes. Pair of worn shoes. A notebook filled with dreams. That was all she had. Her mother cried silently while packing her things. Her father stood tall, masking his own fear with pride. And her cousin, she avoided her eyes entirely. On the morning she left, the village gathered at the bus stop. Some curious, some judgmental, some quietly rooting for her to fail. The whispers followed her as she stepped onto the bus. She'll be back. She won't make it. But she didn't look back. Not once. As the bus rumbled down the dirt road, she pressed her forehead to the window. The fields blurred into horizon. The mountains faded into distance. And for the first time in her life, she was leaving everything she had ever known. Yet even then, she didn't realize. The real betrayal wasn't just her cousin's envy, or the village's doubt. It was something much deeper. Something waiting for her in the world beyond. Something that would test not just her dreams, but her very soul. The city did not welcome her with open arms. It swallowed her whole. The noise, the chaos, the endless flood of people. It felt like standing in the middle of a storm without shelter. Back in her village, she was someone's daughter. Someone's student. Someone known. Here, she was no one. Her scholarship covered her tuition. But little else. The hostel was small, cramped, and cold. The food was bland. The water often ran out. And yet, it was still more than she had ever had before. Every morning, she walked to the university gates with a notebook pressed to her chest. Her shoes worn, her clothes modest. Among students dressed in polished uniforms, carrying branded bags, she stuck out. Some noticed. Some sneered. "Village girl," they whispered. The words stung, but she refused to bow her head. She kept her eyes forward, telling herself that every insult was just fuel. Still, loneliness pressed down on her. At night, while others laughed in the common room, she sat on her narrow bed under the dim hostel light, writing, filling page after page with dreams, doubts, and promises to herself. And yet, despite the ache, she found joy. In books. In libraries so big they felt endless. In professors who saw a spark in her questions. In the realization that she was capable of standing on her own. But back home, envy was still alive. Letters from her cousin arrived, dripping with sarcasm. "I hope you're enjoying yourself in your palace of books. Don't forget where you come from. Not that anyone here has." She didn't reply. She couldn't. Because every word she wrote back would only feed the fire. Yet, there was one letter she always waited for. Her father's. His handwriting was crooked, his sentences simple, but his words carried strength. "Keep going, my daughter. The world is bigger than you think. Bigger than even I imagined. I am proud." She read those lines again and again, whenever the city threatened to break her. Months passed. And then years. She graduated top of her class. The first in her entire village to do so. But success is never without shadows. Professor offered her a job recommendation. "There's a company," he said. "One of the biggest. If you can get in, your future is set." Her heart raced. This was the moment she had dreamed of. But when she told her family, silence greeted her. Her mother worried about her traveling so far for interviews. Relatives scoffed. "Companies like that don't take girls like you. Don't embarrass yourself." And then her cousin's voice on the phone. "You're chasing fantasies. Even if they call you, you'll fail." The words echoed in her chest. For a moment, doubt wrapped around her throat. What if they were right? What if she didn't belong? But then, she remembered that bus ride. The whispers at the stop. She won't last. She remembered the letter in her father's rough hands. "You were born for more than these walls." And she knew. She had to try. The night before the interview, she stood in front of the mirror in her hostel room. The borrowed blazer was too big. The shoes pinched her toes. But her eyes were steady. She whispered to her reflection, "They'll see me, not where I came from. Me." The next morning, she walked into the towering glass building. Its walls gleamed like something from another world. Men and women in crisp suits hurried past. She clutched her folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. The receptionist barely glanced at her. The waiting room was filled with confident voices, polished smiles, practiced answers. She sat quietly, rehearsing her own story in her mind. When her name was called, her heart leapt. She rose, legs trembling but face calm. Inside the room, 3 interviewers stared at her. Questions came like arrows. Her education, her projects, her vision. She stumbled once. But each time she found her footing again. She spoke not just with knowledge, but with hunger. Hunger they couldn't ignore. By the time she walked out, her hands shook. She had no idea if she had impressed them. All she knew was, she had given everything she had. Days passed. The silence stretched. Doubt crept in again. And then the call came. "Congratulations. You've been selected." Her knees buckled. She dropped the phone. Tears rushed down her face. She had done it. The girl from a nameless village had entered the gates of one of the world's biggest companies. But as joy flooded her, a darker thought whispered in the back of her mind. Success may have opened this door, but envy, betrayal, they weren't finished with her yet. Her first day at the company felt like stepping into another universe. Tall glass doors, polished marble floors, the hum of machines and conversations in English that rolled too fast for her ears. She wore her oversized blazer, still too big on her frame. She carried one pen, one notebook, and the weight of her entire village on her shoulders. First she felt invisible. Nobody looked at her. Nobody cared who she was or where she came from. But maybe that was a blessing. It gave her time to observe, to listen, to learn. She worked harder than anyone, arriving before dawn, staying until the night cleaners arrived. She poured herself into every task. Numbers, reports, presentations. Every small assignment she treated like it mattered. Slowly, people began to notice. A manager stopped by her desk. "You're thorough," he said. A teammate muttered, "She never misses a detail." Another whispered, "She doesn't look like much, but she delivers." And then, the first promotion came. Her salary doubled. Her responsibilities tripled. And for the first time she was able to send money home. The letter she received from her father that month was wet with tears. "You are changing everything for us. The village talks about you with pride. You are the proof that dreams are not lies. But with pride, envy always follows. One evening, as she left the office, she overheard laughter behind her. A group of colleagues. "She's just lucky," one voice said. "Yeah, she's nothing special. Just a girl who got in because someone felt sorry for her." The words dug into her skin like knives. She didn't turn. She didn't answer. But that night, in her small apartment, she cried into her pillow. Because no matter how far she had come, some people would always see her as less. Still, she kept climbing. Each project bigger than the last. Each challenge fiercer. And with every success, more whispers followed her. Her cousin, too, grew colder. Letters stopped. Then came rumors from back home. That she had abandoned her roots. That she thought she was better than everyone. And then, the sharpest wound of all. Her cousin applied to the same company, using her name as a reference. When she found out, she felt torn. Part of her wanted to help. Family is family. But another part of her remembered every cruel word. Every doubt. Every shadow of envy. Still, she gave the reference, hoping that maybe success would soften the bitterness. But it didn't. The cousin arrived at the company. And instead of gratitude, she brought venom. Spreading whispers in the cafeteria. "She's not as perfect as you think. She's fake. Everything she has is borrowed." The girl tried to ignore it. To focus on her work. To keep rising. But cracks had formed. And in the silence of her apartment at night, she wondered if she had made a mistake. If bringing her cousin into her world was the moment she had handed her own enemy the knife. Still, she told herself, hard work speaks louder than gossip. Until one day, it didn't. She was called into a glass-walled office. Her manager sat with folded hands. Documents on the table. "There are concerns," he said. "Questions about your integrity, about whether all of this is truly yours." Her heart froze. She had never stolen, never lied, never cheated. Yet somehow, her name was tied to whispers of fraud. She left the office shaking. The walls of the company that had once felt like her destiny now felt like a cage closing in. Back in her apartment, she sat on the floor with her hands trembling. And for the first time, she whispered the words she had feared most. "What if they're right? What if I don't belong?" But deep inside, another voice rose. The voice that had carried her from dirt roads to glass towers. A voice that refused to die. "No, this is not where it ends. If they want to play games with me, I'll show them what survival looks like." And in that moment, the seed of something darker was planted. Her story was no longer about proving herself. It was about fighting back. Against envy. Against betrayal. Against the lies that threatened to erase everything she had built. And soon, very soon, her revenge would begin. The first betrayal didn't arrive like a thunderstorm. It slipped in quietly, like a shadow crawling under the door. One morning, she walked into the office to find silence. Colleagues who once smiled politely now turned away. Laughter hushed when she entered the room. Her desk, once clean and orderly, was scattered with printouts. Numbers circled in red ink. Handwritten notes in the margins. Suspicious. Check again. Her heart sank. She hadn't done anything wrong. She knew she hadn't. But the whispers grew louder. She manipulated the reports. She takes credit for work she didn't do. She's not honest. First, she thought it was office politics. The kind of jealousy that clings to anyone rising too fast. Until she saw the email. It was forwarded to her by mistake. A chain of messages. Her name in bold. Attachments that looked like falsified spreadsheets. Numbers twisted, results manipulated. And at the bottom, the sender's name. Her cousin. Her chest tightened. The cousin she had vouched for. The cousin she had trusted with her name. The cousin she had defended against every doubt. And now, that same cousin had forged her signature, attached her name to a crime she never committed, and sent it directly to upper management. She staggered back from her desk. The walls seemed to tilt. Her breath came shallow. No, this isn't real. She wouldn't do this, she couldn't. But she had. The betrayal felt like a blade between her ribs. Not because of the company. Not because of her reputation. But because it was family. The one person who should have stood with her had chosen instead to destroy her. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, staring at the city lights. Her notebook lay open, but no words came. Instead, she replayed every moment with her cousin. Childhood laughter. Shared secrets. The promises whispered under starlit skies. And now lies. Knives. Silence. She wanted to scream. She wanted to march into her cousin's apartment and demand, "Why? Why me? Why this?" But she didn't. She couldn't. Because betrayal isn't just a wound. It's a mirror. And in that mirror, she saw her own mistake. She had given her enemy the key to her life. By morning, rage had burned away her tears. And in its place, something colder grew. If her cousin wanted war, she would get it. But not the kind fought with fists or shouting matches. This war would be quiet, calculated, merciless. She began by gathering evidence. Every email, every altered spreadsheet, every file that smelled of manipulation. She hid them in a private folder, locked with a password no one could guess. But even as she typed, a fear gnawed at her. What if someone found out it was me? What if they thought I was the one planting these lies? The danger was real. If her cousin caught her collecting evidence, the tables could turn in an instant. And then, everything she had built could collapse. Still, she couldn't stop. Each keystroke felt like survival. And then came her first move. She leaked one document anonymously. Not to her manager, not to HR, but to the auditing team, an outside group known for tearing lies apart. The ripple was instant. Meetings were called. Nervous glances exchanged. Her cousin fidgeting in her seat as questions tightened around her. For the first time, the cousin looked small. Chicken. Caught in the very trap she had tried to set. And in that moment, the girl felt something dark pulse through her veins. Not just relief. Not just justice. But the first taste of revenge. It was intoxicating. But also terrifying. Because once you take the first step into revenge, there's no way back. The next days felt like walking on cracked glass. Every sound in the office seemed sharper. Every look heavier. Her cousin avoided her gaze now. No friendly smiles. No quick words in passing. Only silence. That silence was louder than any accusation. She knew her cousin suspected something. Suspected that someone was pushing back. But she didn't know who. And that gave her power. At night, she stayed awake, tracing out her plan. She couldn't just survive this. She had to turn the knife. She had to make her cousin feel the weight of betrayal. But revenge is never simple. One wrong move, and the company would see her as the problem. One slip, and everything she had dreamed of could vanish. She began moving carefully, whispering questions to colleagues she trusted, checking system logs when no one was watching, copying files onto a hidden drive. Every detail was a piece of the puzzle. But with every secret she collected, the danger thickened. One evening, long after most had gone home, she sat in the office, screen glowing, heartbeat pounding. She was pulling audit reports, documents that proved her cousin had shifted funds into accounts under false names. It was the proof she needed. And a sound. The office door creaked. Footsteps echoed. Her cousin stood there, sharp, mouth curled into something between a smile and a threat. "What are you still doing here?" The cousin's voice cut through the room. She froze. For a moment, the whole plan threatened to collapse. But then she forced a smile. Just finishing up some reports. Her cousin stepped closer. Too close. Staring at the screen. The tension was unbearable. And then, just as quickly, she turned and left. But the message was clear. "I'm watching you." That night, fear wrapped itself around her throat. She couldn't risk being caught again. If the cousin found out what she was doing, it would be over. Still, she couldn't stop. Because every time she thought of giving up, she remembered the shame, the whispers, the look of betrayal in her own heart. And revenge pulled her forward. She set her next move. Subtle one. Not enough to expose her cousin fully, but enough to make her stumble. At the next big meeting, she accidentally forwarded a report, one that highlighted discrepancies in her cousin's accounts. She disguised it as routine data, but it was enough. The room grew tense. Managers frowned. Questions started flying. Her cousin stammered, papers shaking in her hands. For the first time, the balance shifted. The cousin wasn't the predator anymore. She was prey. And the girl felt the surge of power again. But power is dangerous. It whispers. Tempt. Makes you forget the cost. In the bathroom afterward, she stared at her reflection. Her eyes looked different now. Harder. Colder. She whispered to herself, "You started this. Now you'll finish it." The risk grew with every step. If someone traced the leaks back to her, if someone found her hidden drive, she would lose everything. But something in her no longer cared. Because betrayal had already taken her innocence. All she had left was fire. And she was ready to burn. The office didn't feel the same anymore. What once was a place of ambition and opportunity had turned into a battlefield. Every hallway glance felt like a test. Every conversation carried hidden meaning. And in the middle of it all, she carried a secret heavy enough to break her. Her cousin was nervous now. Meetings grew sharper, colder. Her laughter, the one that once charmed managers, had disappeared. In its place, suspicion. The girl had struck once. And the tremors were still echoing. But now, she wanted more. She wanted her cousin to crumble. The way she once tried to make her crumble. To feel the humiliation. The fear. The isolation. But this was not just personal. The higher she climbed, the more she realized. This wasn't only about revenge. This was about survival. Because in a company this big, one scandal could destroy not just one person, but everyone tied to them. She began crafting her next step. Carefully. Precisely. She started planting seeds in conversations. Casual remarks about discrepancies. Innocent questions at the right moments. Little by little, she made others doubt. One night she stayed late again. Heart pounding, fingers trembling. She inserted her hidden drive, pulling together the files, emails, transfers, reports. The evidence was a storm waiting to break. But with every keystroke, a voice whispered inside her. What if they find out it's you? What if everything you've built burns with her? She shut the voice out. Because pain had already burned her once. Now fire was her weapon. The danger grew when her cousin started sniffing closer. She requested system checks. She started shadowing meetings, cornering colleagues, demanding answers. Her paranoia was obvious. But paranoia can be deadly. Then came the moment. A senior executive announced an internal review. Accounts were being questioned. Names whispered in corridors. The cousin's name. Always at the center. The girl had done this. And watching it unfold felt intoxicating. But power always takes more than it gives. One morning, she found an envelope on her desk. No name. Just a single sheet of paper. Read, "Be careful. They're watching you too." Her chest tightened. Sweat trickled down her back. Someone knew. Someone had seen her moves. The walls were closing in. And yet she couldn't stop. Because revenge wasn't just a choice anymore. It had become her identity. She doubled down. At the next all-hands meeting, she stood to present data. Numbers that seemed innocent. But buried within them were questions. Questions that pointed directly at her cousin's accounts. The silence in the room after she finished was suffocating. Eyes darted. Chairs shifted. And then, the executives turned toward her cousin. "Can you explain this?" Her cousin froze. Hands trembling. Voice cracking. This must be a mistake. But no one believed mistakes anymore. In that moment, the girl felt a rush unlike anything she had ever known. The power to expose. The power to destroy. Yet as she walked out of the room, her heart wasn't light. It was heavy. Because every step forward in this revenge pulled her deeper into a darkness she couldn't escape. And deep down she knew. This was no longer about justice. It was about winning. But winning always comes with a price. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Said only 4 words. "I know what you're doing." Her blood ran cold. Someone else was watching. Someone who knew about her investigation. Her cousin. Or someone higher up. She didn't know. But she knew this. If she hesitated now, her cousin would crawl back stronger. And all the pain, all the betrayal, would have been for nothing. So she whispered to herself, "No turning back." And she began preparing for the final strike. The gala was a glittering trap. Crystal chandeliers. Laughter echoing off marble walls. Glasses clinking. It was the company's annual celebration. Executives, clients, investors, all gathered under one roof. Her cousin arrived like nothing had ever happened. Draped in diamonds. Smiling flawless. Walking through the crowd as if whispers didn't follow her. The girl watched from across the room. Her hands trembled around the stem of a champagne glass. Tonight was the night. Because in her bag, hidden carefully, was a drive. containing everything. The offshore accounts, the betrayal to competitors, every single thread of corruption woven by her cousin's hand. But she also knew, once this drive left her hand, there was no return. Her cousin wouldn't just fall. The fallout could scorch everyone near her. The stage lit up. The CEO walked to the podium. Applause thundered. And then her cousin was called up to speak. She glided forward, the perfect image of success. Smiling, graceful, untouchable. She took the microphone. This company is my family. Every achievement I've made has been for us all. The girl almost laughed. The lies were so polished they shone. Her chest burned. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. If you expose her tonight, they'll know it was you. Her breath caught. She scanned the crowd. Faces blurred together. Who was sending these? Her cousin kept speaking. Empty words painted with charm. And then their eyes met. Her cousin looked straight at her. A flicker of recognition. A smile that wasn't warm, it was sharp. Like she knew. The girl's heart pounded. Could her cousin already suspect? She felt torn in half. One side screaming, do it. Her now. The other whispering, wait. Protect yourself. But then, the cousin's voice cut through. I wouldn't be where I am, without family, without trust, without loyalty. The words were a blade. Twisting. The girl's decision hardened. Enough. She moved. Through the crowd. Past the tables. Past the glittering gowns and tailored suits. Her bag felt heavier with each step. Until she was standing at the edge of the stage. Her cousin froze. The crowd stirred, curious. And the girl stepped forward. She held up the drive. Her voice steady, though it felt like breaking. Trust. Loyalty. You don't know the meaning. Gasps rippled. Her cousin's smile faltered. What are you doing? The girl's eyes burned. I'm showing them who you really are. The room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes locked on her. Some confused. Some shocked. Some hungry for the spectacle. The girl's chest rose and fell. The drive trembled in her hand. Her cousin's smile cracked, but only for a heartbeat. Then, with practiced grace, she laughed. My dear cousin, she said smoothly, voice echoing through the hall. She's always been dramatic. Whispers spread like wildfire. The girl's knuckles whitened around the drive. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. Dramatic? Is that what you call stealing millions? Selling secrets to competitors? Lying to every single person in this room? Murmurs. Chairs scraping as people leaned forward. The cousin's face went pale. Then hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. The girl's voice cut sharper. Don't I? Because I have proof. She held the drive higher. Hush fell. The CEO shifted uneasily at the table. Executives glanced at each other. Her cousin's mask slipped further. You wouldn't dare. The girl's reply was ice. Watch me. She stepped onto the stage. Each footstep echoed like thunder. Her cousin tried to block her, hand reaching, desperate. But the girl's whisper sliced between them. Now you'll feel what I felt. The crowd erupted. Questions. Cameras flashing. She handed the drive directly to the CEO. For a heartbeat, silence. Then screens lit up behind the stage. Numbers. Transfers. Offshore accounts. Emails. Every betrayal laid bare under the dazzling lights. Gasps turned to outrage. Executives stood. Investors stormed forward. Her cousin's voice broke through, shrill now. This is lies. All of it. But the truth glowed on every screen. The girl's chest ached. It was happening. It was finally happening. Her cousin spun to her, face twisted. You ruined me. The girl met her gaze. It was cold. No, you ruined yourself. The hall was chaos. Security moved in. Executives shouted orders. Her cousin's diamonds glittered under the harsh light as guards took her by the arms. She screamed, fought, cursed. But no one listened anymore. The empire she built on lies was collapsing in real time. And the girl stood there, in the center of it all, finally seeing her enemy fall. The sound in the hall was deafening. Executives yelling. Investors shouting. Security dragging her cousin through the crowd. The girl stood frozen, chest tight, ears ringing. She had dreamed of this moment for years. Watching her cousin's lies unravel. Seeing her stripped of power. And now it was here. Her cousin twisted in the guard's grip. Hair falling loose, diamonds clattering to the floor. You think this makes you strong? She screamed. You're nothing without me. The girl's jaw clenched. Her voice low, steady. No, I was nothing because of you. Phones recording every second. Her cousin's fury was pure venom. You'll regret this. You'll regret everything. But her words dissolved under the roar of the crowd. The CEO slammed a fist on the table. Enough. Take her out of here. The guards pulled her cousin away. Her voice echoing, cracking, fading into nothing. And just like that, silence crept back into the hall. All eyes turned to the girl. Whispers circled her like smoke. Some with admiration, some with suspicion. Her hands trembled. Her throat dry. She had won. But victory tasted strange. Because in the pit of her stomach was something heavy. Guilt. She had torn everything open. Not just her cousin's secrets, but the company's too. The fallout would spread. Reputations. Lives. Her cousin deserved to fall. But did everyone else deserve the fire that followed? The girl lowered her gaze. Her heart whispering questions her mind couldn't silence. Was revenge justice? Or was it just destruction wearing a prettier mask? The CEO's voice broke her thoughts. You knew about this. For how long? Her chest tightened. If she answered wrong, she could go down with her cousin. Her phone buzzed again. Careful. One wrong word, and they'll know everything. Her blood ran cold. The anonymous sender hadn't disappeared. Someone out there knew more. Her cousin may have been destroyed, but the game wasn't over. And as the weight of her revenge pressed down on her, the girl realized, some victories leave scars deeper than the wounds they avenge. The hall emptied slowly. What had felt like an endless roar only minutes ago now faded into scattered whispers and hurried footsteps. She stood alone, staring at the screen still glowing with evidence. Her cousin's empire shattered. The mighty, untouchable figure, reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. Should have felt sweet. Should have felt victorious. But instead, all she felt was the ache in her chest. Revenge is strange. It burns so bright while you chase it. Fuels every step, every breath. And then once it's done, it leaves you empty. She walked out of that room into the night air. The city lights blinked like indifferent stars. People texted her, congratulated her, called her brave. But she couldn't answer. Because bravery wasn't what she felt. What she felt was exhaustion. For years, her cousin had haunted her. Every betrayal, every stolen dream, every lie whispered in the dark. And now, her face would haunt her in a new way. Screaming, broken, dragged out of the empire she once ruled. The girl's fingers shook as she lit a cigarette she didn't even like. Smoke curled upward, disappearing just like the moment of triumph she thought would last forever. Some nights she couldn't sleep. The silence was too heavy. She replayed the confrontation in her head. Her cousin's words echoed still. You'll regret this. You'll regret everything. And maybe she was right. Because the fallout spread fast. The company's stock collapsed. People lost jobs. Families struggled. Her cousin's name dominated headlines. And though no article blamed the girl directly, whispers found their way back. She knew. She planned this. She wanted the throne all along. Stung. Because maybe there was truth in those whispers. Revenge doesn't come clean. Stains. She had wanted justice, yes. But she had also wanted her cousin to suffer. And now both had come true. But what about her? Did it make her free? Or just another prisoner, trapped in the ruins she helped create? Months passed. The cousin went to trial. The evidence was undeniable. She was sentenced. The girl didn't attend. She couldn't bear to watch. Because deep down, she remembered a time before betrayal. When they were just girls. When laughter filled their nights instead of venom. That memory hurt more than any revenge could heal. She stood by the sea one evening, waves crashing, salt stinging her lips. She whispered to herself, "I won. But at what cost?" The wind didn't answer. And maybe it never would. Because revenge isn't a neat ending. It's a scar. Reminder. She learned that some dreams are worth fighting for. But some battles leave you hollow even when you win. And so, her story became more than just about rising from a small village. More than proving herself to the world. It became a warning. That no matter how high you climb, betrayal can come from those closest to you. And when you strike back, you must be ready to carry the weight of what follows. She turned from the sea. Eyes red but steady. Her cousin's shadow would always be there. But so would her own strength. And maybe that was enough. Maybe peace wasn't about forgetting. Maybe it was about surviving. And learning to live with the scars. Because in the end, she had proved something larger than revenge. She had proved that dreams can't be caged. Even if chasing them sometimes breaks you along the way. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own scars, then don't keep it inside. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who feels small. Someone who feels betrayed. Someone who thinks they'll never rise again. Because maybe, just maybe, they'll realize they're stronger than they know. Don't forget to like this video. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe for more stories that cut deep into the heart. Your voice matters here. Your story matters here. So tell me, have you ever dreamed so big that people laughed at you? And have you ever proved them wrong?